I found something while exploring the Catacombs of Paris, X. It's easily the most terrifying experience I've ever had. Me and 3 of my buddies, back in the early 90s, decided it was a must-see experience on our holiday. It wasn't like it is now with police and heavily restricted access. Sure, it still wasn't legal to go in, but it was a million times easier to just sneak in and get by any blockades. We began our trek, the 4 of us. Could feel the rush of excitement as we came up to the entrance of the catacombs. It was daytime when we went, because we were a little too wary to attempt it in full darkness. Even in the light of day, no one really cared. The entrance was just a wall of blackness. It was like stepping into a boss fight in Dark Souls, Lama. We'd been planning this trip in advance for a while, and asked all around the city, looking for if someone was willing to be our guide. We thought it was a long shot, and that someone would probably have to be stupid to accept the offer, but we did manage to find someone. It certainly wasn't cheap though. It was a woman who we approached, who told us she had a lot of knowledge about the catacombs, and that she'd lived in the city for the majority of her life. Lucy was her name. One of my friends was a little hesitant, and wanted someone with more expertise, but for exploring a part of the catacombs that we shouldn't be. Yeah, that was never going to happen. Lucy led us to an entrance that was not known to the public. Took us to a sewer entrance. One of my friends, Jake, the one who complained about not having an experienced guide, was shaking like a leaf as we walked down the damp hallway. There were ivory skulls lining the wall as we made our way down. It was to be expected. Jake was visibly uncomfortable now. He was desperate to explore this place because of something to do with his thesis topic or whatever, and he didn't want to go alone. He looked to be really regretting it now. Me and Alex were in it for the adventure, and Lucy was in it for the extortionate amount of money that we had to compensate her with. I think she was regretting it too. She was incredibly moody. She asked us if we brought any food, and seemed to be in disbelief when we told her we hadn't. She was offended at our lack of preparation. We told her that it would be only a short look around, and that we could go an hour or so without having a bite to eat. She just ignored me. We spent about an hour with Lucy at the front of the group, leading us. She had a really thick Parisian accent, but we got used to it pretty quickly. We seemed to be in a bit of a steady rhythm, and then Jake chimed in, asking her if she even had a map of the place. She ignored the question and abruptly put her hand up, as if to say stop. We were taken completely by surprise. She snapped her head back over her shoulder to look at us, and her headlamp flashed to our left. At that moment, I caught a shadow ducking around a corner we had just passed. I felt a knot in my stomach. Jake asked if he just heard footsteps. This place was getting to him. Lucy told us to calm down and that it was just other explorers. Jake immediately rejected this claim. He told her that we had gone down a straight tunnel with no intersecting paths, so if it was anyone else, they would have come in from the outside and wouldn't have fled so quickly. I could see that Alex was very clearly frustrated at this point. He went over to Jake and put a hand on his shoulder. He told him to shut the fuck up because he was starting to give him a headache. Jake just silently walked back over to Lucy to follow her again. I dapped Alex up because I thought that shit was funny as fuck. Some time passed and we just kept going. Must have been about 2 hours into the trek, and my stomach was really starting to rumble at this point. We occasionally heard footsteps every now and again, but no big deal. That's normal. Of course, we'd hear of people exploring down here. It's a big, popular place. Lucy was acting more like a tour guide now, and was talking to Jake about some bullshit to do with French culture, and the nature of death and whatnot. Something about how the catacombs were built, because there wasn't enough room for the dead up above in the cemeteries, and that the spirits are restless, because they never wanted to be buried down here. Ooh, spooky. Whatever. Jake was lapping it up. Lucy asked us if we wanted to go left or right. Alex seemed really bored at this point, and told her that she was the guide, so she should be the one to tell us. What a waste of money. Alex walked straight past Lucy and went to the left. I hurried to keep up with him. Jake frantically rushed after us too, and Lucy slowly trudged behind. Out of nowhere, all of our headlamps went off. It caught all of us by surprise. Alex was startled and was like, "What the fuck? How did they all break at once?" Alex was usually so easygoing, so it was really weird to see him panicked. Suddenly, the sound of footsteps came back and sounded like an all-out sprint this time. Alex let out a holy fuck and then started making a dash for the far wall. I ran to the wall closest to me so that I could avoid whatever was running towards us. When I ran to the wall, I felt some kind of force exerting over me, like the wall was trying to suck me in. The footsteps stopped right by us with an abrupt thump. Alex wailed in pain. The footsteps started again and went past us and faded into the distance. The light from our headlamps returned shortly afterwards. Even with them coming back on, we could barely see anything at all. I noticed that Alex was now laying on the ground with his fists clenched tightly. His veins looked to be bulging out from his neck, and he looked like he was straining incredibly hard. He started moaning about his leg. I turned my head down to his legs and shined my light over them. His left shin was completely fucked. It was folded unnaturally into what looked like an L shape. Lucy and Jake tried their best to make a splint out of what little medical supplies we had with us, with as much haste as they could. I told them we needed to leave right now. Nobody protested at all. We just had one problem. With all the commotion of the footsteps and us trying to run to safety, we had gotten turned around completely and no longer knew which direction was which. I think Lucy just took a guess which direction was the right one, and we followed blindly. It wasn't long until Jake was asking for us to slow down and stop for a rest. We all obliged, feeling the strain on our bodies too. That wasn't the only reason he wanted us to stop though. As we sat down, we saw him sat next to some markings on the ground that looked like hoof prints and a pile of shit. Ew dude, what the fuck? He said, adjusting his glasses, and went off into a spiel about some analysis he had done, and something about the diet of whatever the thing was. Bro, literally no one knows what the fuck you're talking about. Alex was just silent. He had not said a word since he hurt his leg. I said that we should get moving, and everyone followed along. All of a sudden, we hear a voice piercing the darkness. It sounded like a child's voice. It was calling out for help and asking if anyone was there. We all pointed our headlamps in the direction that the sound was coming from, and there was a sharp turn there. The voice was coming from around the sharp turn. It called again and was asking for help to find their dad. It said they'd lost him while they were exploring. Jake was not hesitating at all and was making a dash towards the voice. I told him to wait and just take a second to think rationally, but he had already dropped his bag to the floor and ran over to investigate. Jake reached the corner and stared blankly for a second. He looked back over to tell us that there was nothing there. The second he finished his sentence, a large, gorilla-like hand clamped over his face with a massive amount of force, covering his face in its entirety. We only briefly saw his limbs flailing from side to side as he was pulled right into the blackness. The room filled with the sounds of him being slammed against the ground and crushed. I heard a wet, sickening crunch that sounded like whatever it was had sunk its teeth into his spine. Lucy's fight or flight had kicked in, and she stood like a deer in headlights. I immediately ran to Alex, who was begging for my help so that we could get away. I started carrying him the best as I could as he limped in a frantic manner. I shouted for Lucy again and again, telling her to come with us, but she was completely frozen in place. I sat Alex against a wall, much to his desperate protests, and grabbed her arm, which seemed to snap her back to consciousness. She looked around puzzled, like she had traveled to another dimension, took one look back at us, and then started sprinting for her life. That was our cue. I rushed back to Alex to help him back up, and he told me we should have fucking left her. I told him that I wouldn't stoop that low, and we tried to follow behind her, but she was too fast, and we couldn't keep up with whatever route she took. She had left us for dead. We rushed around an unfamiliar path that had a bend in it and just kept half running, half limping, side by side. Everything around me just seemed so surreal in that moment. We only had the one beam of light from my headlamp to help us along our way, and it did not do too much to break up the sea of blackness. No matter where I looked, my gaze could not escape the sight of a skull somewhere or another around the catacombs. After what felt like a lifetime, we somehow came upon another explorer. Where he came from, I have no idea. It's possible he used a different entrance to us, or was in here before us, but I don't know. I tried yelling at him while we were still moving at top speed, and he didn't seem fazed at all. He tried greeting us cordially, but I didn't have time for that shit and cut him off. I told him to move, that we had to run, that something was coming, and that someone was already dead. I did not have time to stop for a breath, and I guess I just seemed like some psycho, rambling about some hallucinations he had. He did his best to calm us, and told us that the catacombs got to people like this all of the time. I pretty much just collapsed to the floor, as did Alex. We didn't have the energy to move anymore, especially as we had not eaten for quite a few hours by this point. He tossed a thermos full of soup our way, and we made quick work of it. My stomach could not hold back its cries, while I basically inhaled the contents of the thermos. After we were done, we told him that we weren't safe here, and that we had to move. He told us to relax, and said he'd rest with us, and look out for anything while we rested. It was clear that he did not believe us, and was simply just humoring us in order to calm us down. I couldn't keep myself awake. My body was way too tired. I jolted awake suddenly. I had no idea how much time I had been asleep for. I could hear the sounds of flies buzzing around. I flicked on my headlamp and reached over to wake Alex up. I had to stop myself from screaming. I put my hand over my mouth and leapt away from Alex. His skin was completely flayed. His bright red skin was just glistening in the light of my headlamps. I could see each and every muscle and tendon in all of their details. His eyes were bulging and looked towards me. His voice was incredibly weak and raspy as he tried to ask me for help. I could not bear to look at him and made a mad sprint to anywhere that I could get away. My legs were burning, and even after my sleep, they could still barely hold me up. I just kept going and going, not even knowing where at this point. I paused at the end of a fork and spotted a figure at the end of a hallway. Bright orange with a distinctly yellow helmet. The voice yelled towards me, but not in an intimidating way. It said my name, my full fucking name. The voice told me that I was safe, and that they'd come to finally get me out. It told me that Lucy had gotten help, and that he was going to lead me to the exit. Part of me wanted to believe it, and run towards him, but I was not a fucking idiot. I turned the other way, and continued to run. The voice shouted after me, pleading with me to come back. I couldn't get the image of Alex out of my head as I was running. What the fuck happened to him? What could have possibly done that to him? The thing from before? I was wondering where Lucy had gotten to, or if she'd managed to make it out alive. She seemed experienced enough, and not too fazed by the weirdness of the place, so I guess she probably found her way out in no time at all. I just wished I'd dropped everything and followed behind her closely. As I ran and ran, I could tell that the darkness and the claustrophobic nature of the catacombs was getting to me. I was really starting to fucking lose it. I got to the beginning of a long hallway and stopped dead in my tracks. I could see something looming at the end of the long hallway. A tall, barrel-chested figure with horns on its head. I had no idea what the fuck was going on anymore, or if I was just hallucinating what I saw. I had to trust my eyes. I had to turn and run back the way I came, I could not risk it. I'd rather run towards the voice with the hope of getting out, rather than that fucking thing, whatever it was. The bull creature was too fast for me. Even with the head start that I had on it, it gained on me like I was running on the spot. I just did the first thing that came into my brain in an effort to save myself from that same fate as my friends. I took off my headlamp and launched it to my left, while I ducked into a path to the right and kept moving. Even if it only bought me a few seconds, it was better than nothing. It worked somehow. I could hear its thundering hooves running in the opposite direction to me that were almost deafening with how much force they exerted. I collapsed against the wall and sat, breathless, and wondering what to do now with my only light source gone. My ears were ringing, and I knew this was the end. In saving my life from that thing for a while longer, I had doomed myself to dying slowly and alone in the dark. It felt like the ceiling was getting smaller and smaller as the time passed by. I think my eyes were just playing tricks on me again. I don't know how much time passed by after that. I started to hear footsteps. Bucking footsteps, just like we had heard earlier. Just as I thought any chances of surviving had gone, I had hope again. It was Lucy. She had come back with a group of 4 of her people. I could only stammer, trying to tell her about the others, but she told me to shut up, and they practically dragged me back out to the entrance. It didn't take that long. I had ended up pretty close to it in the end. After we had gotten outside, I had tried to thank her, but she refused to talk to me. She screamed, basically had a meltdown in front of these guys, and told me to fuck off. She told me to never come back to her country, and that I should have stayed at home, instead of ruining her life. She wouldn't even let me muster a sorry before she walked off, and the guys that she was with looked at me like I had just slapped them all personally. I tried reporting the disappearances to the police, attempting to leave out any details that might make them think I'm insane and have me locked away. But the minute they heard the word catacombs, they told me to get fucked. They told me it was a lost cause and that they wouldn't risk anyone in there trying to save a few people. They said that if we were dumb enough to go in there to a part that wasn't open to the public, then we deserved everything that we got. So I went home alone. I felt guilty. I felt ashamed. I felt like I should be punished for what had happened, but the police were not interested. There was nothing they could do with me. Short of me telling them that I lured them in there and stabbed them to death, they were never going to punish me. I became a recluse. I was terrified of telling people I knew about what happened, but none of them ever blamed me, thankfully. That is my tale, X. It's been weighing heavily on my mind for the last 30 or so years, and not a day has ever gone by since then that I haven't thought about what happened. It's the first thing I think about when I wake up, and the last thing I think about when I go to bed. The Roosevelt Experiment. Between January and May of 1950, a small coastal town that was placed on the coastline of California experienced a series of strange and bizarre incidents throughout the 5 months of January to May of 1950. The town began experiencing random power surges at night, which happened out of nowhere, and soon became almost a nightly time, with many electronics, such as radios and televisions, becoming damaged from the excessive power surges. Along with that, radio broadcasts from time to time were randomly replaced with a few seconds of static at the volume the radio was at, but then would suddenly increase in volume and would become excessively loud and irritating. Along with this, there were also reports of loud pitched noises, sometimes interrupting radio broadcasts. The town also experienced small earthquakes that happened randomly, but soon became common, and at any moment, a small earthquake would have been a 5 to a 5.9 on the Richter scale. Sometimes, a strange pitched noise could be heard throughout most of the town, and would last about 10 to 15 seconds. But after 5 months of all of this, at the end of May, it all stopped, like a switch had been flipped, and the town returned to normal and has mainly been forgotten about by residents, and its events faded into obscurity. It's worth noting that the parts of the town that were closer to the ocean had this happen much more commonly and intensely, while parts further away had it happen less and not as intense. Some also noted how back on the 1st of January, 2 small military ships carrying what was most likely around 150 people were seen taking off at the dock and making their way to a small island about 10 miles away from the shore. Those boats were never seen coming back from the island, and only those 2 boats ever went to the island. Along with this, a few years after all of this happened, 2 fishermen had gotten close to the island and saw that the island had a chain link fence around it and a keep out sign on the fence. That's all, folks. From O. Be me. Be doing my 3 AM nightly runs up and down my favorite mountain road. Thick forests on both sides of the small 2-way road. It was a foggy night. Fog comes in slowly over the course of the night. Gets to a point where the fog is too heavy to keep going. Say fuck it, do a 3-point, and start heading back down. Listening to my Super Eurobeat Presents Initial D, Final D Selection, CD Disc 2. Fog getting much worse now. Fog lights useless. Resort to driving near the edge of the road, because I could not see the line anymore. And that's when I saw the legs of some shitter in a white robe through the edge of the fog, walking up the road towards me. Stop. Guy slowly starts walking up to my car. Looks like a homeless dude. Big shitty beard, scraggly hair, etc. But his robe was clean. At least it looked like it. Looking dead at my side of the car the whole time he's walking up to it, with a completely blank look on his face. He walks up to the passenger side of my door, and just stood there, with his arms at his sides. Slowly starts bringing his hands together in his sleeves. I sat there for a good 5 seconds, before realizing that this is the perfect plot for a horror movie. I'm spooked. Rev that shit to 9K, and dump it next to him. Take off. Drive a little more recklessly now through the fog. A few minutes later, down the road near the end. Fog is gone at the foothill, crystal clear again, and that's when I notice the dude in the white robe is sitting in the tree line looking at me, completely blank, as I drove towards the exit. This happened to me about a year ago, before Halloween last year. Haven't seen the dude in white since. I've been on that road more than 100 times, and it was the first and only time I've seen him. I never go up, even when it's the slightest bit foggy now. This is the road. Loose copy from a thread on here a good while ago. 4:45 AM. Following my cousin. Going to leave car off at the body shop to finish. Make left turn onto Popular Road. Out of nowhere, headlights get right on me. Looks RSX headlights. Didn't notice anyone on the road when I turned, and no one was behind me. Assume they pulled out of a driveway fast, and I did not notice. On this 1-lane road, guy is perfectly behind me, where I can see his lights above my trunk. Doesn't get closer, nor fall back. A few times, let my cousin get ahead, downshift, and give my 4.6 a pull. He doesn't budge, still on me. After 5 minutes of him right on me, the road opens to 2 lanes. Expect him to pass me, so I grab my wheel and look forward, expecting some fun. After 3 seconds of nothing, I look into my rear view and see nothing there. Instantly, think of Dagami headlight trick, cool vibrations. Look to my right and left, he is not there. After a few seconds, realized he's vanished. From the time I look forward to now, there is no turn-offs or roads. Get to my destination. Ask cousin if he saw it. He was on his phone the whole time. Motherfucking ghost. Also from O. Be me with FC RX-7, S4 and A with a couple mods, still slow. 3 years ago, an FC S4 Turbo crashed on a back road around here. Driver and car will rip. Driving around last year, headed to a friend's place. End up on a local back road we all have fun on. Realize I took the wrong road. There's no roads or turn-offs on this road. Look into my rearview to see some older headlights. Decided to turn my hazards on and make a 3-point turn. Wave person by. As car passes, look over to see an FC, bone stock white with turball on the side, basically a stock T2. Didn't put it together at the time. Thought it was dank and didn't bother to try and talk to him because I needed to get to the friend's house. Put car in reverse and look back, putting right arm on back on passenger seat. In my reverse lights, I see the front end of the FC. His headlights pop up, shining right into my eyes. Dog of me instantly pops into my head. Didn't even realize he got somehow behind me. Look forward, adjust mirror, and get ready to toge. He pulls up past me. Right as he does, I step on it, and so does he. He gets the lead. I'm right on his ass. Start going around corners at toge speeds. Know this road fairly well. About midway through toge, note a passing point is coming up. Long right-hand turn to sharpish left turn. He goes on the inside, as expected. I'm midway another lane. Know there's some bumps in the left-hand turn apex. Say fuck it, because I'm in real motherfucking toge hours. As we're in the straights, I wind my loud-ass FC up to 8K, get right up next to him. Look over to see just a black figure. Can't make out any details, as if when you see a car from far away with a heavy tint at dark. Go into left hand at crazy speeds. Hit mad bumps. Wheels almost bite on fender. He gets behind me. Come out of corner at dogamy speeds. Main straight till last corner. Look back. Gone completely. There's no driveways, over roads, or turn-offs. Get mad confused. Get to friend's house. Tell him what happened. He brings up FC from years ago. I tell him the road I was on, and it was the one the FC crashed on. Tell him the corner I passed him at. He tells me the T2 went the same line I did, but hit bumps, causing his wheels to bite his fender and spin out, going off the road into a tree to rip. Get mad, fucking goosebumps. He tells me not to really worry since I won. Still spooked. Decide to not really drive that road at night anymore. A few months go by. A different friend has like an 05 Maxima with a V6 and manual. Calls me in the middle of the night, telling me he crashed. Go to help. It's on the road with the FC. Ask him what happened. He tells me a car would not get off his ass. Tried to lose him and ended up hitting some dirt, trying to get away, and spun out of the road. Car was fine. Friend was shaken up. Ask where the car went. It just fucking vanished. Spooked, times 1 billion. Decide not to tell him, to try and keep him calm-ish. Pick is my FC. On coils, and has header back exhaust. It's changed a bit now, but cleanest picture of it. Also, this happened in Florida, for whatever that's worth. Mom's on the board of directors for this local theater that's been around since like the 50s. 12-year-old me decides to tag along with her to one of her board meetings. Unless there is a running production, the theater is empty during the day. All of the grown-ups set up in the green room, which is located at the easternmost part of the building. Little me gets bored of all the business talk, so he decides to go and take a piss. Compared to the green room, the bathrooms were on the complete opposite side of the building, where everything should be devoid of people. I enter the empty bathroom, and it is your standard affair. 2 sinks next to the door, 2 stalls next to the sink, and 3 urinals in the back. Still shy about using urinals, so I opt for the second stall. Keep in mind, not only did I see the entire bathroom was empty, but I'm also not hearing any of the telltale signs that someone else is using the bathroom. As I am doing my business, I hear one of the urinals behind my stall flush. This is followed by a series of footsteps, which walk past my stall, right to the door. The door then opens, and that's the last I heard of the phantom pisser. Afterwards, my mom just dismissed it as the air conditioner or something moving the door. But those doors were heavy wood, heavy enough that you actually had to put in some effort to open them. Also, even though she was quick to dismiss, if she had ever gone to the theater late at night to check on anything at all, my mom would always make my brother, my dad, or me go with her.